I first became aware of airplanes somewhere around 1927. There was not a lot of photography going on that people in the aviation world were doing. I lived in mid-Manhattan at that time, and I got my first camera, which was a box camera. I began to write a monthly column for a magazine called Model Airplane News, and which used my photos a great deal, and that was when I first started getting published. All the cross-country flights were made at Floyd Bennett Field to the West Coast and back, and I photographed a lot of people from Amelia Earhart, Charles Lindbergh, including Jimmy Doolittle, way back in the early days, before I got to know him even in the Air Force. Amelia Earhart lived in Westchester, and I used to go up to the Westchester airport. This was where she was first starting in to fly, and I knew her when I was a kid and got pictures of her as a kid. I attended the Cleveland Air Races. I got a ride out in a Marine Corps airplane, and I made a lot of nice pictures out there. Some of those pictures I still have, and I treasure them. May 6th, 1937, I got a job working in a darkroom for Acme News Pictures. Acme News Pictures was the photography division of the Scripps Howard newspaper, the New York World Telegram. I met almost everybody that worked for the Daily News during the time I was there, including Duke Krantz, who was the pilot of the Daily News airplane. Because of him, I was able to be at Lakehurst when the Hindenburg blew up. I was at least a mile away from that thing because it was so big in order to cover it. And it was such a blast of heat from that exploding hydrogen that my eyebrows were burned right off my face. This Zeppelin was 5 city blocks long, and it took about 33 seconds for that whole thing to be consumed in flames. All during this period, the flying bug never left me. I was rejected as a flying cadet 6 times because they had 3,000 applicants trying to get into 250 spaces. And on my 7th attempt to become a cadet, they accepted me in 1940. I was totally ecstatic. I ended up in Parks Air College in East St. Louis. When we graduated, they asked me where I would like to be assigned. I got my choice of assignment and went to Randolph Field. Randolph Field was called the West Point of the Air at that time, and we were forever making public relations pictures and making hometown news, as we called it. When a kid came into the Air Force from New Jersey or from California, we would take pictures, and then our public relations division would send those pictures out to their local newspapers, and most of those pictures were official photographs that went into the cadets' file, and this is a photograph they had from the younger days that were made in my photo lab.
These men are aviation cadets. In the near future, they will have learned many things. How to pilot a plane, how to navigate, or how to operate a bomb site.
Kodachrome film lasted 50 years without deteriorating, and one of the top people in the aviation world was a gentleman by the name of George W. Goddard, who was a brigadier general in charge of Army photography and Air Force photography. He thought that Kodachrome was absolutely the best film that you could possibly use for making color pictures. And when he saw some of my work, he said to me that those are proof how good Kodachrome really was. Randolph was a showpiece. It was the showplace of the Air Force. The Central Tower, which is still affectionately known today as the Taj Mahal, this was the building in which my photo lab was located. When you're in the flying school, there was always somebody banging up an airplane. And every airplane that was involved in an accident, we had a photograph for the official records and also to find out what was the cause of it. So that was a pretty constant routine, especially when you had almost 400 students flying airplanes in a limited area. I was there from June of 1941 to November of 1942. I was transferred to the Bombardier School in San Angelo with a special assignment to teach student bombardiers how to photograph the bombs that they were being taught how to drop so that they had a record of where they were hitting the targets. One of the things that the bombardiers had to learn was when they dropped bombs, they were also supposed to be able to photograph where the bombs were hitting. During a war, if you drop bombs and they don't hit the target, you got to come back and hit the target again in order to take it out. So if you get good pictures of where the bombs are falling the first time, you may not have to go back there and risk your life the second time. I worked there for about 9 months. I got transferred out of the Bombardier School into the Twin Engine Flying School in Pampa. I became the photo officer of the base, and I also learned a good deal about the B-25 when I was up there, an airplane that I got to love very much. And one day, I got a ride in the B-25 that was flown by one of the boys in my class, and we flew from Texas all the way to Florida at 500 feet over the ground. Everything I had been taught about proper flying, they were breaking all the rules, and I couldn't understand that. But I later found out that that flight that I got a ride from Texas to Florida in was a practice mission for the Tokyo raid. And the guy I was flying with was Ted Lawson, who wrote the book 30 Seconds Over Tokyo. I got a call from Randolph Field from the higher headquarters saying to report to Jefferson Barracks, Missouri, to prepare myself for immediate overseas shipment. And I was absolutely stunned because I didn't understand what had happened. What had happened was that earlier I had met Captain Elliott Roosevelt, who was a student at the Air Force Observation School, which was at Brooks Field. And one day when I was out flying, I photographed him in his aeroplane out on a practice mission. And when he got back, he had called up my photo section to find out who took those pictures. And I was able to meet him and give him some of those prints. And he quite never forgot that. And when I got overseas, I found out that he had asked for me personally to the War Department to be in his unit. So I ended up working for Colonel Elliott Roosevelt in the 90th Photo Reconnaissance Wing. As soon as I got over there, they sent me to school again. By then, I was an old hand in the photo business in the Air Force. All of a sudden, I found myself transferred out of the 90th Photo Reconnaissance Wing and into Headquarters 12th Air Force, because it seemed that the commanding general of the 12th Air Force, General Cannon, he wasn't happy with the photographs of the bomb hits that his bombing groups were getting, and he asked for somebody who had that kind of a background, and they pulled me out for that. So I ended up as a staff photo officer of the Headquarters 12th Air Force. One day I got ordered to go to Corsica, where we had 4 bomb groups in northern Italy where the Germans still were. And I went out to see what they were doing with the cameras and what kind of pictures they were getting. And everything related to the results that they were bringing back, which the general wasn't pleased with. And they had a mission going on the following morning. And that night the Germans came over and bombed the airplanes. All of us jumped out of the tents. When I say we were up close, we were up that close to where the combat situations were going on. And then we moved up to Florence. One job was I went out in a small airplane, an L5 they called it, and that had no guns in it or anything, just room for the guy that I was flying with, because I didn't want to fly the airplane all alone and take pictures. And we went out over a place called La Spezia, which was a big harbor right near Genoa. And we wanted to find out if the Germans were still in La Spezia or if they had driven away and gone north. So we flew over that, and I made a whole series of pictures of La Spezia. While the Germans were still in there and running to get out, we got away with it. We had to see what they were doing in order to know where to hit them. And that's what they taught us at the Air Corps Intelligence School. You could measure the height of buildings by measuring the photographs. I photographed many pictures that I'd get no credit for, because when I was working in the Air Force, those pictures became official photographs, United States Army Air Corps and United States Air Force. After the end of World War II, I got out of the military in the active service, and I stayed in the reserve. In the reserve, I was assigned to the 33rd Photo Reconnaissance Squadron at Mitchell Field. It was amazing how my background in photography enhanced my reserve situation. And during the Korean War, I ended up working in the Targets Division, and I got transferred into the Pentagon. In 1957, I got promoted to Lieutenant Colonel, and that was a career in the military. All during this period, I had, of course, never stopped photographing airplanes and air races, and I amassed a collection of about 5,000 colored slides. I have been published in about 12 different books on World War II, including one P-51 Mustang to the POW camps, the German POW camp in a place called Bolzano, Italy. I will leave a legacy of some of my work in World War II.